The American Impressions Collection. Just because you don't have a lot of money to throw around doesn't mean you have to live with disposable furniture. Right now, there's a sale at your Ethan Allen Gallery.
Kmart has changed a lot since we opened our first store 29 years ago. But nothing we have ever done compares to the changes we're making now. We're changing the way Kmart looks, feels, and acts, with more brand names, new store designs, and improved service. What about cosmetics? We understand you want to feel good about where you shop. Good. I think that's great. Thanks. So we're doing everything it takes to make you love your new Kmart.
Win buying power with the Iowa Lottery scratch game and go ahead. Do this.
And this. Even this. Oh, this is nice. With buying power, you can win one of the $1,000 cash prizes. You could go on a wild shopping spree. An extra $1,000 sure comes in handy this time of year. Spell the word cash and you've got real buying power.
$1,000, please.
Take a check.
Win buying power and shop till you drop.
Now, where'd I park the car?
This is TV8, KCCI TV, Des Moines.
Of the 145 Americans killed in the Gulf War, 35 were killed by friendly fire, killed by their own troops, by mistake. 2 of them were killed by Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Hales, U.S. Army.
I made a tragic mistake, just a tragic mistake.
Ooh-wee, did we hit those targets? I hope it's not friendlies I just blew up, because they're all dead.
It's very difficult to get out there on a black night in a sandstorm and sort out good and evil that are only a mile apart.
She's had 4 kids already and was pregnant with her 5th when she pled guilty to child abuse. The judge said no more children, at least for 3 years. As part of her probation, she agreed to be implanted with a device that temporarily prevents pregnancy.
What do you say to critics who say that you are depriving her of a basic constitutional right?
I say they're right. What I did was I found that there were constitutional rights of the children, the born children and her unconceived children. And I balanced their rights against her rights, and they won.
Meet Bud Crystal. He spent most of his career as a compensation consultant, making up to $500 an hour, telling America's top companies, including CBS, how much to pay their executives.
Most CEOs are not unlike the Queen and Snow White. You know, every night before they go to bed, they look at this mirror and they say, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the highest paid of all?
I'm Mike Wallace.
I'm Morley Safer. I'm Ed Bradley.
I'm Steve Kroft.
I'm Lesley Stahl. Those stories and Andy Rooney tonight on 60 Minutes.
Chrysler announces the ultimate guarantee, a plan that helps protect your new Dodge Caravan or Plymouth Voyager from the day you buy to the day you sell. It's your assurance of value when you buy, safety when you drive, security when you need it. A warranty choice no one else offers. Even guaranteed value when you trade. You can't do better than that. Call 1-800-92-MINIVAN and rediscover American value.
Just one sip.
Do you know the name of this?
Just one.
Normally at these things, I'll just hold a glass of champagne.
Yeah, but this is different.
One sip of Ballatore.
Sparkling, delicious. No champagne tastes like Ballatore.
I'd much rather sip it than describe it.
Just one sip.
Do you? Yeah, I do. Me too.
I think this tastes better than champagne.
One sip of Ballatore.
Take one sip. You'll say champagne never tasted this good.
One sip says it all.
They want you. The American Express card. Don't leave home without it.
Of the 145 Americans who died in combat during the Gulf War, 35 were killed by their own troops. But the families of those soldiers are not the only ones mourning the tragedy. Back in September, we saw a story in the Wall Street Journal by Robert Johnson and Caleb Solomon. It was about Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Hales, one of the Army's brightest stars, the commander of an elite helicopter squadron who seemed destined to make general. Until one night along the Iraqi border, when he made a simple mistake and pushed a button that fired a missile that cost 2 American lives and ruined his own.
You can't get lucky and miss anymore, Steve. The machinery does it all. You just drive it out to where you want it, and you lock the fire control computer on it, and kapoo, it's just gone.
And no one knows it better than Ralph Hales. In February of this year, he was in the Arabian Desert, commanding 300 men and 18 of the most sophisticated weapons in the U.S. arsenal, Apache helicopters. With infrared electronics and Hellfire missiles, they were designed to destroy advancing columns of enemy armor, day or night, at a distance of 5 miles.
The battalion was trained to go out and take out an entire brigade of enemy armored forces in one strike. And
you were there to kill tanks, kill Iraqi tanks?
You bet, and bunches of them.
But on the night of February 16th, Ralph Hales found himself on a mission that he says the Apache was not designed for. What you're watching is actual videotape from helicopters on the mission. In a driving sandstorm with 35-mile-an-hour winds, his battalion was asked to search out and destroy 2 suspected Iraqi vehicles that had been spotted just a mile from American positions. Worried about the weather and the closeness of the enemy to the American troops, Hales says he protested the mission, but was overruled by his commanding general.
What was your concern there?
The concern was we would get out there and get involved, and somebody, you know, would be someplace they weren't supposed to be, and we would have a friendly fire accident. It's very difficult to get out there on a black night in a sandstorm and sort out good and evil that are only a mile apart. And the Apache wasn't built for that.
Recognizing the potential danger of the mission, Hales decided to go himself, along with 2 other Apaches. When they approached the American positions, they began looking for the Iraqi vehicles at the location they had been given by the ground commander, a spot on the map, 915-270. There was nothing there but empty desert. So they turned east, flying directly over the American lines, when they spotted 2 vehicles that seemed to be out of place.
Those 2 targets popped up in our screens, and they stuck out like a sore thumb. And they were suspicious. They were out front, and they fit the description.
Starfighter 6 has 2 big APC sort of vehicles, grid coordinate 915-270. They do not appear to be a part of your screen line. They're stationary. Let me look at them a little bit here.
The mistake had already been made. Hales had misread the location of the 2 vehicles. The location he gave the ground commander, 915-270, was the same location the ground commander had given him at the beginning of the mission, the place where the Iraqi vehicles were supposed to be, but weren't. The 2 vehicles Hales had in his sights were American. The ground commander's response was immediate. He told Hales, "Those are enemy. Go ahead and take them out."
Yeah, those are enemy. You go ahead and take them out.
Once I made that number mistake, for everybody on that battlefield, those vehicles became enemy.
How did you make the mistake?
I read a wrong line of information, and that convinced the ground commanders that that was them, that's the bad guys, and that's what they said. That's them, that's the 2 vehicles we've been shooting at, take them out.
Looks like one vehicle is pulled up to another one there. They may be transloading people. Roger, go ahead and take them out.
Everybody says, well, how can you make a mistake like that out there? Well, there aren't any there's not any numbers on that desert floor out there. It's just all desert. And the positioning of those vehicles and the description became the overriding feature of the mission for us. That's what we were sent out to do. 2 vehicles forward of the lines that were traveling to the east. And that's who they were. They were 2 vehicles forward of the line traveling to the east.
Once again, the Apaches checked their targeting information. And this time, they actually caught Colonel Hale's mistake. 2 of the Apaches sent out laser beams to the targets and got back exact grid locations of the 2 vehicles. And they weren't where Colonel Hales thought they were.
Hey, gun 6 is blue 6. I tell you, I'm getting a range of about 4,000 meters, but when I nav and store it, I get a grid of the 9524 vicinity. It's not coming out right. We better go take a look. You think so? Roger.
But the pilots chose to believe their eyes and not their sophisticated equipment.
We believed the battlefield that had been described to us, and we shot on what we saw and not on what the Apache was trying to tell us. It was a big mistake.
You almost caught it.
Got close. I got real close. Sure did. But in a couple of seconds, it passed because the captain backed out of his information too. He backed out of it and says, that can't be right, and then that was it. They were gone.
Hales was still cautious, engaging the targets with minimal force, machine gun fire from his 30mm cannon. But the gun jammed. Hales says the two Apaches tried to move closer for a better look at the targets, but a warning went off in the cockpit, telling them that someone was looking at them on radar.
Radar 13.
Since the American troops nearby were supposed to have their radar off, Hales thought the radar must be Iraqi, and the commander on the ground was pressing him to fire.
Could you still engage those two vehicles at the 270 grid line? Roger. I could shoot those easy, right. Oh, you know, look like you're doing a damn thing. Roger, go ahead, take them out. Well, I'm going to tell you, it's hard to pull this trigger. I got two vehicles, one's pointed towards us, the other's about 90 degrees perpendicular to them.
Roger, that's what I got too. There you go. Now do the mother.
Okay. I'll be firing in about 10 seconds.
You remember the weight?
Yes, I do. There's a countdown on my screen. It's time of flight countdown. And so as my fire control computer was locked on the Bradley, and the seconds were ticking down, it's going 6, 5, 4. I said in the intercom system, well, I hope they're enemy, because here it comes.
I hope it's enemy.
That's all right, just stay on.
Here it comes. I guess you could say that hit it. I'll go ahead and shoot the second vehicle. It's still intact, but it's fixing to go away.
You're ready in the back, let's do him. This bud's for you.
Uh-oh.
That's all right, he's dead too.
Ooh-wee, did we hit those targets?
You could see it clearly?
Oh, yeah. Sure. Vividly, horribly. None of us have killed anybody before. And when they were Iraqis, that was okay. But 5 seconds after the second vehicle blew up and the call came in, friendly vehicles are hit, it was horror.
Iron News Stalwarts reporting that maybe friendly vehicles may have been hit over. Don't you dare say that. Roger, I was afraid of that. I was really afraid of that.
Ceasefire, ceasefire.
Ceasefire. I hope it's not friendlies I just blew up, because they're all dead.
Miraculously, they were not all dead. 2 were killed, 6 injured.
Okay.
We knew what we had done. We could look out there and see them burning. Saw the explosions.
Did you think my life's ruined?
I wasn't thinking about myself for a long time. I was in a mission. It wasn't over yet. My life being over didn't really occur, I guess, until about 9 o'clock that morning, 8 hours later after the accident, the first time I saw the general.
The general was Thomas Rame, then commanding general of the 1st Infantry Division. 4 days after the incident, Hales was relieved of command and shipped home, not for killing 2 American soldiers, but for disobeying orders, ignoring a guideline set down by his commanding general that senior officers should direct battles, not pull the trigger.
The people I've talked to at the Pentagon say, look, Ralph Hales is a lieutenant colonel, a battalion commander. He's supposed to be the guy who can make the tough decisions and make the proper judgments. That's what he gets paid for.
Okay.
That if he's sitting in a cockpit with firing missiles, he's too close.
Wow. That's, so we're not supposed to be out front where the fight is now.
There's a perception on some people's part, I think, that you're a bit of a hot dog, a hot shot, gung-ho, that you couldn't wait to be out there, that you couldn't wait to get the first kills in your battalion. that you were trigger happy.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty vicious. That's pretty vicious. Somebody went and told one of the families that. If there wouldn't have been a war, I wouldn't have shot him. And if I wouldn't have gone on that mission, I wouldn't have shot him. And if they wouldn't have been parked this way, I wouldn't have shot him. And if he wouldn't have said shoot him, I wouldn't have shot him. There's all kinds of reasons those guys got shot. None of which is trigger happy. None of which is trigger happy.
10 months after the accident, Hales retired, angry, frustrated, and disgraced. His wife worried that he might try and take his own life. Of all the Americans who accidentally killed their fellow soldiers during Operation Desert Storm, Hales was the only one singled out in the press during the war. The Army identified him by position in a news release and confirmed his name to a pool reporter.
For the first time in history, a friendly fire accident was taken all the way into the public domain. I was out there fighting like everybody else, and I had a terrible war accident. I got named. I got told that I was a violator. Where are all the other people who shot the friendly fire accidents? Where are the people who pull the triggers? There's just one, isn't there? It's just me.
Do you see yourself as a victim somehow in this?
Oh, yeah. Sure. And my family?
I think the families see themselves as victims.
Of the deceased boys? Oh, their loss is much greater than mine, and my loss was a career and disgraced and all that other stuff. Their loss is real. Somebody no longer is in their life.
In Oxford, Kansas, 7,000 miles from the Arabian Desert, the whole town turned out for the funeral of Corporal Jeff Middleton, a football star. His mother told us he'd wanted to be in the Army since he was a little boy. He was 23. They've accepted their son's death, but not the way he died, and they hold Ralph Hales responsible.
I'm saying he made a mistake. In that way, I'm blaming him. We don't need to put the name on it. I'm blaming a pilot I don't know. He made a mistake, and it was a bad mistake.
Well, he fired the Hellfire missile that killed Jeff. I don't know how else you get around that.
The other soldier killed, 18-year-old Robert Talley, was the youngest American to die in the Gulf War. He was just out of basic training. He joined the Army to get an education. He was the pride of his family and lived with his mother and grandmother in Newark, New Jersey. Hales wrote both families, expressing his sorrow.
How he feels, I don't care how he feels. Nobody knows how I feel when I think everything is all over, and then a couple of weeks later I got to get papers, signed papers for the grave to be open again, because here comes some of his remains here to me. So I don't care about how he feels.
How does anybody expect the two families of the two dead soldiers? What does the world think these people are going to think about me? That I'm a great person?
You would have preferred that the families not know who you were.
That's correct. I'd like to be like all those other people who pull the triggers and hit our own troops.
Anonymous.
Correct. That would be wonderful, to be anonymous.
You didn't ask Mrs. Talley to forgive you. You didn't ask any of the families to forgive you. Why not?
It just didn't seem right to me to sit out here and you know, I'm intact and I'm going on with my life. It just didn't seem right for me to ask them to forgive me. I just wanted to tell them I'm very sorry. I didn't want to make them feel obligated to forgive me. I shouldn't have made that mistake. I was better than that, but I made it.
What do you want? Is there anything that could make this thing better for you?
No. No. There's no reconciliation with the Army that's possible. There is merely a reconciliation between me and the American public, since they were told about this and they were told one side of the story and very few details of one side of the story. So I think this was the right thing for me, just to tell my story. And I just could not live with this stigma, this accusation, no due process, no trial, just somebody being mad at me saying I'm a bad person. I had to tell my story, so I did that. And I feel better.
The House of Representatives is interested in Colonel Hale's story, too. The Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations wants to know why the machine gun, the 30-millimeter cannon on his Apache helicopter, jammed. They want to know about problems with the navigational equipment on one of the other helicopters, and they want to know why the Army initially told them that all of the equipment on the mission was working properly at the time of the accident. Last May, General Gordon Sullivan, the Army Chief of Staff, ordered a special task force to begin looking into ways to reduce friendly fire casualties. That task force is still at work.
Who guarantees overnight air delivery on Saturday to more people coast to coast?
Morning. UPS on Saturday?
Who did you think?
Thank you.
Our competition uses a very sophisticated, state-of-the-art, highly precise device to measure their cars. Our car, the Accord from Honda.
Hey, save some money.
Are you sure you didn't do any of this?
I love to watch him cook.
That looks good. Has he ever done this before?
Hey, look, why don't you guys go pick out a good wine? Come on, you know where it is. Out of the kitchen.
All right. Oh, how about this?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that'll be great with the fish. Good, let's do it.
Nothing brings out the flavor of today's cooking like a good Sauvignon Blanc.
Philip, you can cook for me anytime.
Well, as long as you pick the wine.
Ernest and Julio Gallo present a very special Sauvignon Blanc. It's time for a change to Gallo.
Hey, Mr. Dalthorpe, your graphites are here.
Who guarantees overnight air delivery on Saturday to more people coast to coast?
Thank you.
Who did you think?
UPS on Saturday?
A perfect crime, New Orleans style.
Oh, it's too perfect.
But will this mystery be murder on Jessica?
The devil will have his due.
Murder, She Wrote. Then, of all the dangers your child will face, the worst may take place right in your own home.
I'll tear you apart.
Brother against brother, how far can it go? My Son Johnny, tonight.
Need a new car but can't afford new? Now there's hope. It's the nearly new car, and it might put you in the driver's seat. Tomorrow's Money Crunch report on the CBS Evening News.
Northern Exposure, Monday on CBS.
People around the world who are worried about the alarming rate of population growth have been heartened by a revolutionary birth control method called Norplant. Norplant produces temporary sterilization in women who agree to be implanted with the device. Last December, the FDA okayed it for use in this country. That, you would think, would be enough to set off a religious hue and cry. So far, it hasn't. What it has set off is a constitutional hue and cry. Using it voluntarily is one thing, but does a judge have the right to sentence a woman to have herself sterilized, if only temporarily? That's what happened to 28-year-old Darlene Johnson of Tulare, California.
I had a rough life. I mean, I have 5 children. I'm only 28 years old.
Darlene Johnson had her first baby at 16. She's never been married and supports her children on welfare. She's also been convicted of theft, forgery, and assault and battery. And she served 1.5 years in state prison. In September of 1990, Johnson was arrested and charged with child abuse. At the time, she was pregnant with her 5th child and had been accused of using an extension cord and this belt to beat her 2 oldest daughters, who were 5 and 6 years old.
Do you think that you're a good mother?
Real good mother.
But you did beat your children. Spank them, as you put it.
Correct. I spanked them.
I saw some of the pictures that were used in evidence. I mean, those are some pretty bad bruises. Mm-hmm. I mean, look at this. That's broken skin.
The Rhea fell on her bike.
And what about these on her buttocks?
Well, yeah. When I get on them, I get on them.
Do you think you went too far?
I don't think. I know I went too far.
Please rise. That's what Howard Broadman thought too. When she pled guilty in his county courtroom in Visalia, California, Judge Broadman decided to help her make sure it wouldn't happen again by doing something that had never been done before.
I sentenced Darlene Johnson to parenting classes. I sentenced her to mental health counseling. I sentenced her to jail. And by her agreement, she agreed that as a condition of her probation, that Norplant was appropriate.
Johnson was to have Norplant, 6 hormone capsules about the size of matchsticks, surgically implanted under the skin of her upper arm. The capsules release a low hormone dose which prevents pregnancy for up to 5 years. After 3 years of probation with periodic monitoring to make sure the device was still in place, Johnson could have the capsules removed. Her normal fertility would be restored in a matter of days.
But her crime was mistreating the children, abusing her children, not having the children. So how does preventing her from having more children solve the abuse problem?
The additional stress of more children was not something this woman needed at the time that she was undergoing her parenting classes and her psychotherapy classes. And she agreed with me.
But can Judge Broadman temporarily prevent Johnson from having children? He says he can if her children benefit.
What do you say to critics who say that you are depriving her of a basic constitutional right?
I say they're right. But what you have to do as a judge is you must balance conflicting constitutional rights. And here, what I did was I found that there were constitutional rights of the children, the born children and her unconceived children. And I balanced their rights against her rights, and they won.
Judge Broadman has given up on Darlene Johnson. What right does he have to tell her that she can't have babies for 3 years?
Charles Rothbaum is Darlene Johnson's court-appointed attorney. He thinks Judge Broadman's decision to impose Norplant is unconstitutional. He's appealing that decision because Johnson has changed her mind and now doesn't want Norplant.
My first reaction was to think of the movie Invaders from Mars, which I saw as a kid, in which these aliens came down to Earth and they were implanting devices in the backs of persons' necks in order to control their behavior. And that movie was considered a horror movie at the time.
Rothbaum doesn't buy Judge Broadman's reasons for implanting Johnson with Norplant.
I really don't understand this idea that he's protecting unborn. I mean, how do you protect somebody if you don't even allow the person to be born? I mean, how is that protecting? What does that mean to say he's protecting unborn? What he's doing is preventing somebody from having life.
Then what he's doing is preventing someone from being born to be abused, to be beaten.
Well, if there's other ways of preventing abuse. You can take the child out of the home. You don't mess with a fundamental right if there's some less restrictive method that can be used.
Hi, Dwayne.
Only one of Darlene Johnson's 5 children lives with her. 3 are currently being raised in separate foster homes, and 1 lives permanently with Johnson's mother.
Do you want more children?
Not now, I don't, but in the future.
I mean, you're 28 and you have 5.
Correct.
Can you take care of more?
I feel the Lord will provide a way for me. My mother had 8.
For Charles Rothbaum, Judge Broadman's decision isn't really about preventing child abuse.
I feel what he's trying to do is really keep somebody who is on welfare from having another child. And I think it's pretty presumptuous for a man to tell a woman that he's helping her by telling her she can't have kids. That's really none of his business.
Judge Broadman says it is his business, that he did what he did because he wants to help the children.
There are those who have suggested that what I did in this case was based on some kind of economic factor. All the children of the world who are neglected and abused are poor. That's who's poor. Her economic status had nothing to do with my decision.
But economics has everything to do with the Norplant controversy in Kansas, which is being spearheaded by State Representative Kerry Patrick. He saw statistics that showed that most women on welfare do not take advantage of free family planning. He read about Norplant and thought he saw a way to cut the state's growing welfare bill. He proposed legislation that would pay women on welfare $500 to have Norplant put in. It would also pay them $50 each year for up to 5 years to come in for an annual medical checkup to make sure it was still in place.
Why not try a program with an incentive? Why not give the welfare
woman a choice? Why not empower her to make the decision as to whether or not she should use Norplant?
But $500 is awfully tempting if you're poor.
Well, that's the nature of an incentive. A cookie manufacturer gives you 25 cents off to buy their particular brand of chocolate chip cookie. It's an incentive to try to get you to try their brand. You have to make the amount so that they'll respond.
Indira Gandhi used to offer radios in India for people who would use birth control. I guess the price has gone up a bit.
Kansas Representative Kathleen Sebelius heads the state's taxation committee and opposes Patrick's bill. She feels the incentive is a bribe.
The idea of choice, I think, is removed. If you have a starving person and offer them food, if they will do something, I don't think that's a very realistic choice. I think the same thing is done for these women.
What about the specter of eugenics? People say that this bill is racist, that what you're doing is trying to get rid of a permanent underclass that is largely minority.
Norplant is not a permanent form of sterilization. You take the Norplant out, and within 24 to 48 hours, fertility is restored. If during this key period, from age 15 to age 30, we can avoid the welfare recipient from having that second pregnancy, she can get the job skills, she can get the education, then the Norplant's removed and she can be equipped to take care of a child.
If we would use that $500 at an earlier point in their lives, pay them to stay in school, offer scholarships, use the $500 for this woman who has a child to provide daycare so she can go back to school or find a job. Those, to me, are realistic uses of that money, as opposed to offering her a bounty to use a birth control device.
Patrick isn't against putting money into education and better services. He just has a bottom line.
The real question is, do we, as a society, since we're paying welfare to these people, taking care of people who can't take care of themselves, is our obligation in the reproductive area unlimited? And just like anything, there's got to be some sort of limits. Why do we have an obligation as a taxpayer to pay for her to have 2, 3, 4, or 5 children when we can provide an incentive that would limit it? I mean, the taxpayers have rights.
I guess I find it somewhat tragic that this drug is finally on the market, which does offer a somewhat significant breakthrough for women in terms of birth control. And one of the first things that happens is men get it, or get the idea, and begin to figure out ways of how they can control women's reproductive choices by using this drug.
Judge Howard Broadman was nearly killed last March when he was shot at in open court by a man who opposed his putting Darlene Johnson on Norplant. Her sentence is currently on appeal, but because of the assassination attempt, Judge Broadman has removed himself from the case. Kerry Patrick's bill will be taken up by the Kansas legislature this winter. In an initial vote last spring, the bill was defeated. However, a provision was passed making Norplant available free to any woman on welfare in Kansas.
Muffin and medium coffee, please.
Is that for here to go?
To go. I'm meeting my daughter for breakfast.
Good morning.
Hers is a boundless energy. We share that energy at Texaco, leading the way in exploration, conservation, and alternate energy. The energy to go as far as we can, and then go even further.
Many believe it was the innovative spirit of Europe that inspired him. And when Mr. Ford came home, he created Lincoln Continental. Today, with computerized suspension, electronic transmission, and anti-lock brakes, Continental is one of the most advanced automobiles in the world. Lincoln Continental, what a luxury car should be.
60 Minutes, a CBS News weekly magazine, will continue.
Of all the dangers your children will face,
I put the lock back on my door.
the worst may take place right in your own home.
We were roughhousing, Mama. He fell. It was friendly.
Brother against brother. How far will it go? A world premiere movie, a must-see for every parent. My Son Johnny, tonight.
This is CBS.
Spellbound perfume from Estee Lauder. Now at Von Maur.
Politicians in Washington are costing America billions for countries across the globe, not enough to fight crime in our streets. Billions to defend our competitors, no action on outrageous bills for health care. A financial quick fix for Kuwait City, not enough for America's cities. Hands-off companies that export our jobs, no help in sight for Americans. Wake up, Washington. It's time to take care of America.
After the Storm, tonight at 10.
With the American economy in the dumps and American workers being fired, you'd think top corporate executives would consider cutting back their stratospheric salaries. Well, think again. Steve Ross of Time Warner and Lee Iacocca of Chrysler, among others, continue to pay themselves enormous sums while their companies are hurting. There's one man leading the charge of criticism about runaway executive pay. He used to be on the side of corporate bosses, but now he's telling their secrets.
Most CEOs are not unlike the Queen and Snow White. You know, every night before they go to bed, they look at this mirror and they say, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the highest paid of all?"
Meet Bud Crystal, whistleblower. He spent most of his career as a compensation consultant, making up to $500 an hour, telling America's top companies, including CBS, how much to pay their executives. His recommendations, including bonuses and options to buy stock at a cut rate, often allowed those executives to make millions. Why did Bud Crystal turn against his former friends? He says it's because in the greed is good business environment of the 1980s, many companies stopped playing the game fairly.
I began to see situations of saying, gee, the pay is going up and up and up, and yet the performance isn't. And I began to be more and more aware of this tremendous rationalization that goes on. You know, for example, they'll say in the good times we have to pay people highly because, after all, that's fair, that's just. And they say in the bad times we have to pay people in order to hold them with the company. And there are only two types of times, good times and bad times. You say, well, when do we get to the part where we cut their pay? You say, well, funny, we don't. We don't cut their pay.
Is it, as it at least looks on the surface, just to be bald-faced greed on the part of these CEOs?
I wouldn't rule that out.
Greedy is exactly how Stephen Wolf's enemies describe him. CEO of giant United Airlines, he made more than $18 million in 1990, a year when United's profits were down by 70%. Wolf made 1,200 times, that's 1,200 times, what a starting United flight attendant made.
There's this decoupling where the top people never look down, and the board doesn't look down. If you said, well, what about the stewardesses, the poor, so what does that have to do with anything?
Stephen Wolf said no to an interview about his pay. In fact, none of the executives on the highest paid list wanted to talk to us. We went looking for Wolf at a United board meeting. Oh, when is the meeting over? Can we wait for him?
It's not a definitely set time what time the meeting will be over.
The meeting is ongoing and goes at least through lunch.
Through lunch.
So we're still in session in there right now.
I see. Is there any chance you'll break and I can talk to him?
At this point, there's no comment on anything, but we are in meeting there, and I'll advise them that you are here.
Okay. Finally, Wolf emerged and told us that he took the $18 million because there was an effort underway by United employees to buy the company and replace him. That takeover effort later failed. Wolf kept the money.
And we were all going to be leaving the company. And in that circumstance, I exercised a portion of my option, one-time event, had not done it before, had not done it since, don't plan to do it again in the future.
And he says he's not going to do it again. And it's unfair to clump him in with all these other people, his argument.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's sort of funny. When I remember I was a kid, you know, your mother would give you a couple of cookies or whatever, say, if you eat those too fast, you don't get any more. But if you're a CEO, the faster you eat them, they say, here, put your hand in the jar, have some more. In other words, the minute you exercise all the stock options, I say, I don't have any more options. Oh my God, you poor thing. Here's have 500,000 shares. And so the faster you exercise, the more you get.
You don't believe him?
Well, it's always possible that could occur. I mean,
but unlikely.
The probability is probably so low that it would have to be written in scientific notation. So I had to buy a share of stock. In one share of stock in 527 companies.
This is Crystal's new career, combing through the fine print of proxy statements where companies bury the terms of their executives' big pay packages.
First we start out with the cash compensation. So it says he made $850,000 base salary.
Crystal found a lot to criticize in the fine print of William Anders' pay package. He's the chairman of General Dynamics, the huge defense contractor that makes everything from nuclear submarines to the Tomahawk missiles fired at Baghdad. Anders recently said that because of shrinking defense budgets, the company may have to lay off 30,000 workers over the next several years. But as Bud Crystal explained to an investors group, Anders had something very different in mind for himself and other top executives.
And they put in a very simple plan. They said for the top 25 executives, we're going to pay you a bonus of 100% of your salary if the stock goes from 25 to 35. And if the stock goes from 35 to 45, at that point, we'll pay each of you a bonus of 200% of your salary.
No bogus bonus for Bill! No bogus bonus for Bill!
The bonus plan so angered rank-and-file workers at General Dynamics that they demonstrated outside company offices in San Diego. But less than a week later, the plan paid off for Anders and other top executives. He got his bonus, a cool $800,000. And just last month, after the stock rose again, Anders got another payoff, another $1.6 million.
So this is sort of the Marie Antoinette school of management. I mean, let them eat cake. We were going to lay off 30% of the workforce, but meanwhile we're giving this tremendous incentive to the management of the company.
Because Anders didn't respond to our request for an interview, we took a camera to one of his business lunches.
The fact that needs checking is that I have received absolutely not a cent in cash on the bonus. It has all been held back by the company until I'm age 65, which has very severe restrictions on it. That tends to get missed.
But Bud Crystal didn't miss something Anders failed to mention: what General Dynamics is doing with the millions it's holding back.
We put it in a special deferred compensation plan where the executives get an interest rate of, I believe, not less than 14% on their money. I mean, that sure beats the passbook savings account,
Madonna, if her records bomb, she's out of work. Michael Jordan, if he doesn't score, he's on the bench. How come poor performance doesn't hurt these CEOs? Bud Crystal says it's because many corporate boards of directors aren't doing their job. Crystal believes that when it comes to deciding how much to pay the CEO, directors too often act simply as rubber stamps.
They aren't asked to spend much time studying all these complex plans, and obligingly, they don't. They don't have any help. They aren't given any consultants. They're told just whatever the CEO wants to tell them. In effect, the CEO is really, he's negotiating with a shaving mirror. It's in the morning, it's just shaving away. What do you think, big boy? Another $2 million, just something like that. And you just goes and gets it. That's why the system's unfair. There is no arm's length negotiation in most cases. There's no one pushing back.
There may be another reason board members are reluctant to push back. The CEO has often arranged for them to get a big raise, too. How much does a director at one of these big companies make, just to sit on that board?
On the average, I did a study recently, about $45,000 a year, but ranging up to, say, 100.
Just to sit on this board?
Yeah, that's for maybe about 7 or 8 days, 10 days' work.
And there are perks for directors, too. United Airlines, for example, offers its directors and their families unlimited, free, first-class travel. And most big companies now give directors pensions after just 5 or 10 years' service. You're certainly suggesting, if not outright saying, that there's some kind of a payback. If the CEO pays his board a lot of money, they will pay him back with a big salary.
It's not a collusion, it's not a smoke-filled room deal. I think it's more like, for example, when I move into a new house, let's say my neighbor shows up and gives me a cake the first day, invites me over for dinner, you know, and introduces me to all the other neighbors and all. They're just wonderful neighbors. And maybe 6 months later they say, by the way, you know, I was trying to put a little garden here. Do you mind if I move the fence like a couple feet, you know, if I take a couple feet of your land for this garden? You know, well, you say, well, my God, I mean, what are you going to say? Say, well, gee, I mean, how can I be such a, you know, I can't be nasty. So I say, okay, fine. I think it creates a climate.
I get it, but the point is that the board is there to protect the stockholders, the shareholders, from exactly that.
That's right.
Now some big stockholders like pension funds are trying to protect themselves. Kathleen Brown is California's state treasurer. She and other trustees run the pension fund that invests state employees' retirement money. This year, they got fed up with what giant ITT was paying its chairman, Rand Araskog.
We're talking about an $11 million salary that was given to a CEO at a time in which this company was not performing for its shareholders.
So you went in, you tried to get the board to change its salary policy, and they thumbed their nose at you, despite the fact that you own 1 million shares.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
So now you're trying to fire the board?
Well, we voted our shares against the board. It was largely a symbolic gesture because we didn't think with our 1 million shares, 1% of the company, that we could affect the kind of change that would mean that the board would be thrown out. But it was intended to signal to corporate America, where we own shares in their companies, that we want to see performance and we want to see accountability.
At Nike, the giant shoe company, founder and chairman Phil Knight is trying to set just such an example. He makes $600,000 a year. Now, that's a lot of money, but it's far below the average for big company CEOs. And Nike's growth and profits have been far above the average. Nike even pays some of the athletes who endorse its shoes a lot more than it pays its CEO. You've been singled out as a person who doesn't take home a lot of pay yourself out of your company, but you own the company. There's obviously a correlation there, don't you think?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think that, you know, my rewards for being involved with this company are really come mostly from being a shareholder. So I think that gives me a perspective that in some ways most managers don't have.
Knight believes the way to give managers that perspective is to pay them for long-term performance rather than with gimmicks or bonuses that kick in after one good year. What do the Germans do that's different from what we do, or the Japanese?
They very much try to keep a balance between what the CEO makes and what the lowest paid full-time worker makes. And those are standards that are that pay the chief executive much, much lower than what chief executives are typically paid in the United States.
And how? On average, Japanese companies pay their CEOs 17 times what rank-and-file workers make. In the U.S., the boss makes more like 100 times the average worker's pay. Not all American companies have such a big gap, of course, and some have cut salaries or even fired CEOs who don't perform. But Bud Crystal says that so many other executives have sweetheart deals that the days of fat paychecks are far from over. Aren't you just being a little hypocritical? Didn't you set up this whole system in the first place? You're the one who basically taught them how to do this.
I think I was the top consultant, or at least many people thought I was. And I certainly did design a great many incentive plans, and I did a lot of things. And in a way, people are saying now, they say, you know, where do we deliver the 30 pieces of silver? You know, it's the Judas situation. Now you are decrying the very practices that you helped set up.
Are you Judas?
No, I don't think so.
They think you are.
Yeah.
They hate you.
I said in a speech recently that I said that if you have to think of me as a biblical figure, I'd rather be in the second phase of my Mary Magdalene act. That it's possible I might have been a hooker for 25 years, but now I'm going to try to end my life as a saint.
At least a few companies may be starting to feel the pressure. ITT's board recently voted to tie executive pay more closely to the company's performance. And General Dynamics has just called a special shareholders meeting to consider dropping those big executive bonuses.
Imprisoned by sinus pain, trapped by sinus pressure, it takes the power of Sanyutab to release the pressure and stop the pain. That's something Sanyutab's done for more people for more years than any other sinus medicine. Sanyutab, relief for prisoners of sinus pain.
Release me and let me live again.
You just arrived. You don't know your way around town. So you start looking for a friendly face. And then you see welcome signs of civilization and sophistication. You're gonna like it here. The card, the American Express card. Don't leave home without it.
How do you change the best-built full-size pickup in America? You painstakingly reshape the exterior until it's more refined. Make the instrument panel more user-friendly. The available power controls easier to reach. And you redesign the interior for unexpected comfort.
The best never rest.
How did we change the full-size Ford pickup? Very carefully. More people are driving the best-built, best-selling American trucks than ever before.
Is your car shaking, rattling, or rolling? Whether it's alignment, shocks, or struts, Midas uses top technology to diagnose the problem and top technicians to fix it. For suspension or alignment, nobody beats Midas. Nobody.
Our dentist gave us a reason to switch toothpaste.
Baking soda.
2 out of 3 dentists recommend baking soda for healthier teeth and gums.
And only one major toothpaste has it. Arm & Hammer Dental Care, the baking soda toothpaste from the baking soda experts.
As we said after Andy Rooney's piece last week on lingerie ads, we're going to get a lot of mail. We did. And as we also said, Andy, you answer it.
Being a critic is hard work these days because there aren't many things you can be critical of without getting in trouble. I got in big trouble last week when I pointed out the irony of newspapers running stories about sexual harassment on the same page with ads that featured attractive, half-dressed women. I was snowed under with complaints. I'm never going to watch 60 Minutes again. I'm writing Lawrence Tish, the chairman of CBS. You'd get a break if you lived in my house. A broken nose. Lesley Stahl should refuse to introduce you. The producer of 60 Minutes ought to be ashamed of himself for having you on the show. I'm writing all your sponsors to tell them I'm not buying their product if they advertise on 60 Minutes. I don't know why people associate advertisers with what's said on this broadcast. Advertisers aren't buying what any of us say. They buy time that's left open in a broadcast that attracts a lot of people to watch it. They're buying viewers, not opinions. Advertisers don't see this show before it's broadcast. They don't approve or disapprove of anything on it. Last Monday after the show, I spent the day answering the telephone. I told one woman I didn't think she had any sense of humor. Big mistake. Never tell anyone that he or she has no sense of humor. People would rather be accused of shoplifting than be accused of not having a sense of humor, especially people without a sense of humor. But putting aside the question of whether my remarks were fair or unfair, I'm disappointed at how little I can say that's honest and direct, even when I'm wrong, without getting in trouble. Does anyone really believe that what I did last week means that I'm in favor of sexual harassment? There are only a few safe targets left, just a few groups of people you can say anything about without getting in trouble for it. I've made a list of safe targets, and I probably ought to stick to those. Politicians, for instance. You can say anything you want about them. It doesn't matter how unfair you are. People seem to like it, and they don't complain. Other safe targets are insurance companies, doctors, television, rich people, Fruit Loops, the telephone company. You can criticize any of those without getting in trouble. But if you want to be safe, don't say anything about women, blacks, Jews, Catholics, the poor, homosexuals, American Indians, the mafia, abortion, Scientologists, the Eskimos.
As Andy fades out, let me fade in with the mail. And none better to start with than the letter we got from Andy's daughter, Emily Rooney, news director of station WCVB-TV in Boston. She wrote, "Nothing my father says about women surprises me, but I was shocked to learn he doesn't know how to pronounce Harris. Or is it harass?" Now the rest of the mail. About our story on the Bush administration's reluctance to help the world keep its population in check, there was, of course, the predictable. Once again, the far left-wing liberal bias of a master propagandist has led millions to blame President Bush. Nice job, Mike. And the unpredictable. It is possible to be a conservative Republican and support population control. There are other Republicans who share my view, and it's time for us to stand up and speak out. About a story on MSG, we heard from the president of the Institute of Food Technologists. He wrote, 60 Minutes misrepresented the safety of MSG, focusing on unsubstantiated anecdotal claims of a few alleged MSG-sensitive individuals. But there was also this from the commissioner of the FDA. I very much appreciate the fairness with which you treated FDA's position on MSG. While MSG is a safe ingredient, the public is entitled to know what it is eating. I'm Mike Wallace. We'll be back next week with another edition of 60 Minutes.
It was born out of 100 years of experience, shaped by an engineering vision that saw everything except limits. Mercedes-Benz S-Class, the car of a lifetime for the people who have created it and for the people who will drive it.
What's up? The talking elephants our sales force left with yesterday?
Yeah, there's been a little problem. Do we have any that speak elephant? Now who's going to get them to all of our salesmen?
One company offers 1030 delivery to more places than anyone and treats them all with mammoth importance.
Presenting Hugo, the talking elephant.
Federal Express, our most important package, is yours.
Presenting the Hoover Elite 2 upright with attached hose and tools. It's the crevice finding, blind binding, far-reaching, carpet cleaning, hose-wearing, tool-bearing, ultimate cleaning machine. Hoover invented it.
Imagine a rent-a-car company that offers special delivery right to your door. That's Enterprise.
Here, let me help you.
Enterprise, a special rent-a-car company that gives you special delivery.
There I was dreaming when I heard a loud noise. I woke up, turned on my TV, and there they were. Stars from The Guiding Light, The Young and the Restless, Loving. I thought, wait a minute, it's morning, right? I must still be dreaming.
I can't believe you dreamt that, because starting Monday, we can see our soap stars in the morning on CBS This Morning. You know, it's breakfast for your head.
Tuesday at a special time, take a trip to Toontown, where rabbits are stars. It's the box office smash with never-before-seen scenes. Who Framed Roger Rabbit at a special time. It's a retirement party for Harlan.
You have been treating me like some kind of a barnacle on your boat.
Well, we gotta run. Evening shade. Then, when the general leaves home, will he set up camp in the Major's kitchen?
Major, get me bread. Lots of bread.
Major Dad, Monday.
All those who love great comedy, say hi.
Monday, can Murphy outsing the Queen of Soul?
You made me.
I'm not Martha.
And you ain't no Vandella.
Murphy Brown. Then, is Mary Jo a wimp because she won't let her son go hunting?
If I don't let my son gun down Bambi, he's gonna end up dancing second string at the Joffrey.
Designing women.
All those who love great comedy, say hi.
Who will keep Marissa? Her father? His estranged wife? Or the surrogate mother? Whose baby is it? Find out on 48 Hours Wednesday.
This is CBS.
Their goal is to sell off 50% of a $5 million inventory and walk out of that building at 8800 Hickman Road with a job well done.
And they're getting that job done. It means you need to hurry. The public lost lease sale at Pigeons. It's tomorrow 10 till 9. See that big ad in today's Des Moines Register.
Everything's reduced at both Pigeons locations. Financing's available. No down payment, no monthly payment till April next year. You need to hurry. Pigeons.
Since the first corn was planted, American